The power of intimacy to activate natural psychedelics. I'm Dr. Jenny Martin. In this webinar, I'm going to be talking about natural psychedelics. Another word for natural in this context is endogenous. Endogenous means within the body. And we have the most potent psychedelics, 5-MeO-DMT and DMT, that naturally exists in our body. Now, these molecules don't exist at high enough concentrations in normal waking consciousness to actually activate these full-on psychedelic experiences. However, under certain conditions, a certain kind of sexual intimacy being one of those conditions, we can actually experience our own natural high, this amazing psychedelic experience that we're going to talk about from 5-MeO-DMT. This can happen naturally in our body. We can actually activate a higher concentration of it and have the experience that mirrors if we had taken 5-MeO-DMT. So first of all, I'm going to share with you a study from 2020 that was a brilliant design. This wasn't dealing with sexuality, but it was really addressing this question. Okay, if these substances are within us, 5-MeO-DMT, can they be activated to psychedelic levels? And one of the ways to actually study that is to essentially trick people, to make them think they're getting a psychedelic. We call that, it's a placebo experimental design, but you're not really giving them anything. You're just giving them something with absolutely no psychoactive power to it. And if you do that, the person should only experience a psychedelic trip if they're activating their natural system. And as this study called Tripping on Nothing, Placebo Psychedelics and Contextual Factors, what this research team discovered is that the power of what we call set and setting in psychedelic science. So the expectations, the beliefs, meaning set, your mindset, and then setting, meaning the environment, how things are framed in terms of, what type of experience it's going to be. And as opposed to just a casual recreational setting or more of an intentional setting. And what they did in this study, everybody got the placebo. Everybody got something that wasn't psychoactive. But they basically made people think that, yes, this is absolutely, you're getting a Schedule I drug. And they had security guards outside the lab to make it look like this was, something that was highly regulated. They had some people that were actors wandering the halls, talking about how zoned out they were, what an amazing high it was, what a trip they had, what a psychedelic trip they had. And they were apparently supposed to be people that had done the study just prior to the actual subjects showing up. So they were really setting the stage for these individuals to really believe, oh, wow, this is going to be a really powerful experience. I'm going to really just go to another dimension. And what the researchers discovered is that actually 61% of the people had some type of psychedelic experience. Different, experiences for different people, but some of the people, even after being debriefed, that they received nothing, that it was just a placebo. Some of them were so captivated by what happened to them that they said, okay, I get it. I get it. It was just that. But could you get me more of that? Because it was so amazing. I want to experience that again. So, what can we understand from this really unique experimental design? What we can understand is this type of effect would not have happened if it wasn't triggering our own endogenous psychedelic system, endogenous meaning within us. These people had such a belief that they were going to receive a psychedelic that expectation tripped off their own system to produce higher concentrations of these substances. And that's why they actually reported some effects that they would have had if they had taken an actual psychedelic. The power of intimacy to activate natural psychedelics. I'm Dr. Jenny Martin. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about the most potent psychedelic on the planet called 5-MeO-DMT. And the fact that that exists within us, and that through a certain kind of lovemaking, that we can activate it to psychedelic levels. So normally DMT and 5-MeO-DMT that exist within us are at such small concentrations, we're not going to experience a psychedelic state. However, with the proper set and setting, which means your mindset, your beliefs, your expectations, the setting that you're having the experience in, you can actually change that level within you and experience a psychedelic experience. Before we talk about sex, I want to talk about a study that came out in 2020. And what it involved was no psychedelics, not giving anyone a psychedelic, but just making people believe that they were going to receive a powerful mind-altering drug, and then seeing what happened. And this placebo design is an ultimate test for whether we actually can trigger off higher levels in our body. Because you could set all the belief and expectation up, but if human beings actually didn't have an endogenous meaning within, an endogenous psychedelic system, then the placebo would not have worked. But what happened was they really set this study up so well. They had people walking the hallway who were supposedly people who had just finished the study, but they were actors. And they would talk to the people, the subjects coming in for the study, and talk about how wild the psychedelic trip was and how amazing it was. And they wish they could do the study again. And then they had security guards outside the lab room giving people the sense that they were going to get a Schedule 1 drug. So really setting up the whole setting to give the expectation and that they were getting something very powerful. And they told everyone that everyone is getting the medicine, the plant medicine here, everyone is getting the psychedelic, nobody is getting a placebo. Because in normal psychedelic studies, there would be the placebo group and there would be the psychedelic group. And it's pretty straightforward for most people to actually tell which one they got. In this one, they made everybody think that they were all going to get the psychedelic. And what's very fascinating is 61% of the subjects in this study experience some level of psychedelic effect with their own system. Some people, even after being debriefed and told, hey, look, you actually got nothing. Any effect that you had was just a natural effect within you. It actually wasn't due to anything you were given. Some people, that just went beyond them. They really, really still hung on to this fact that they were given something, and they said, hey, okay, I understand, but can you actually get me more of that placebo? That was really amazing. So this tells us that we do have the possibility of having these substances that are normally found in very small amounts in our body, but they can be increased to higher concentrations with the right set and setting. And we're going to be talking about lovemaking in this webinar, but we first wanted to establish the fact that yes, we do have these substances. We do have 5-MeO DMT and DMT, the most powerful psychedelics known to science. They have been, for instance, 5-MeO DMT. There's over 15 studies now detecting it at trace amounts in the human body. And the fact that under this placebo condition, people could actually experience a full-on experience tells us that this can actually go to higher concentrations. Psychedelic levels of 5-MeO, of DMT in general are not accessible when we're just in our normal waking state. It is induced when we're in an altered state, and the altered state of sex being one of them, and near-death experience being another, and a birth experience has the potential to trigger this as well. So what is important to realize is, even though the vast majority of women don't experience a psychedelic birth, their cervix has the potential to really powerfully alter your physiology and alter you into this, create this intense psychedelic state with DMT 5-MeO being in higher concentrations in your body. Now, we're talking about actual sex in this webinar, but I'm using this as an example to let you know that, okay, we could say most people don't have psychedelic sex naturally. True, but most women don't have a psychedelic birth either. Now, just because people don't experience it doesn't mean that it's not actually the way your body has been designed. And I'm using birth as an example to have us actually change our perspective on this. Just because most people don't experience an ecstatic psychedelic birth doesn't mean it's not possible. There's something called the fetal ejection reflex that is part of the design of a woman's body, that she can actually birth a child without pushing. Now, it's not necessarily, there wouldn't be some feeling of pain or discomfort, but there can also be an orgasmic experience that's tripped off as well. This fetal ejection reflex, there's a obstetrician in France that's been writing about this remarkable possibility of actually delivering a baby without the labor involved in it, without the the intense pushing. The body will actually expel the child if there are certain conditions. Again, we're talking about set and setting. So if a woman is not feeling observed, and how, we actually have the opposite condition when a woman goes to a hospital and there's constant examinations, there's constant people around her monitoring her condition and engaging with her, asking her questions, maybe even telling her what to do next. And this interferes with a woman going into a deeper trance state and allowing her body to do what it naturally can do. So it is the interference with the natural process. Our idea in medicine today that, we can actually do better than the body. We can actually make this process smoother by all of our medical interventions. Now, this is not to say that there isn't an important place for medicine in this process, and it's not shaming anyone that doesn't have this type of experience. But we have got so far from what is possible by the way that we handle this experience today, birth, that we have lost the understanding of what was known in other times in history. Michael Oda talks about Indigenous women going into forest or into a natural setting and squatting down on the ground and being alone and just birthing their child without the long process that we know today. And I just show you what he said here in this article. He said, basically, for an easier birth to actually activate this fetal ejection reflex, it's not about learning something and trying to make your body do something. It's about checking out, zoning out, feeling safe, feeling unobserved, feeling like you're not, having to reply to someone, answer someone. Because what he talks about is that as soon as you're in a part of your brain that actually produces language, you are disconnecting from the state that you need to be in for this process to happen naturally. You need to have that task-oriented, that doer part of you turned off to be able to let the body do what it can do naturally. And again, it's not to say that there's something wrong with women that actually go and use regular medical intervention, but it's just to say that the body is designed with amazing capabilities, and tuning back in, realizing that that is possible, is a huge mind shift in modern days, where we think technology is always the answer and a better solution than what is actually the technology within us. So we're talking about, for the rest of this webinar, about sexuality and accessing this natural state. And what is important to realize, just like with the birth, just because not every woman experiences that type of birth doesn't mean it doesn't exist as a possibility. Just because most couples don't experience this full-on psychedelic, going to another dimension type of sex naturally without taking anything, doesn't mean it's not possible. Few couples experience their sexual potential. That's a given. And it's not about changing, okay, I got to be some other person. I've got to go on this long quest to learn some mystical tradition. Not that at all. It's not about changing who you are to have this experience. This potential is actually already within you. It's about disconnecting from the mindsets that block this experience. Even more so than childbirth, sexuality, the sex experience, is layered on with so much cultural values, expectation, so much conditioning about what is going to happen. And this disconnects us from actually experiencing what there is good reason to believe, that in thousands of years ago, it was natural for people to experience a hieros transcendent experience in sex. So some of the ways that transcendent sex in research studies have been described, and I can actually speak to it myself, having experienced these things and also working with clients, that they've had this, and I've had this ego dissolution experience where the idea of who you are as a separate identity, it just dissolves. It's gone during the time of lovemaking, of sex. And yes, there is an intensity of that during orgasm, but not just during the moment of orgasm. Beyond that, the whole experience can be an altered state if you pay attention to certain things that we're going to talk about here in a minute. And then the idea of space-time transcendence, a sense that you have no sense of what you would normally think of. Okay, I'm in the here and now. It's, I know the time, I know where I am. There's this sense that you are off in another dimension, like completely transported. This is not just like, okay, I'm here in the room, but I'm feeling kind of high. This is, I'm like, the room is gone. Like it doesn't exist anymore. I'm somewhere else. And during sex, it's your partner is there with you, but not in the same way as we're separate people. Like there's a sense of you're both merged to this higher reality. At a certain point, words kind of fail these experiences because it is so beyond language to describe. The sense of unitive experience is a sense of you're no longer feeling separate as your separate self, which is a very healthy thing to feel in a relationship. The opposite would be a sense of complete codependency when you're in a waking state consciousness. But in this psychedelic state, it's not dysfunctional. It's actually you going beyond your ego, you going beyond your self-identification and having this mystical awareness that you exist interconnected with all of life, that there's no separation between you and everything else. And you have this sense that there's this divinity within everything. You're not just what you believe that you are in normal waking consciousness. You're not just this human trying to live your life. You are this majestic being that is the same as everything. There's no separation. And then cosmic love. So this sense of a love that is so consuming beyond just a feel good, I'm falling in love with you. I mean, that is probably as close to it as you can get, but it's something on another level. And you could call it universal love, but it's the sense of an unconditional love. And so when you compare what happens in a 5-MeO trip with the experience when couples actually reach this full-on transcendent state, there's these overlap in these areas to give us the sense that, yes, this is being produced by the 5-MeO DMT in your own body. So the question is, what is stopping us from experiencing this type of sex naturally? And what I'm going to look at in this session here is 11 different factors that we're actually taking these factors from the molecule itself. So we're looking at, okay, what does 5-MeO produce? What is the molecule itself like? And how can we realize that we need to shift some of our beliefs and expectations about sex to actually activate that molecule during a sexual experience? So the first of these 11 is In a psychedelic sexual experience, what facilitates a 5-MeO experience is a motivation to connect with the divine. That being something that is going to happen in a 5-MeO DMT experience. It's not religion. Don't think about this in a religious context. Think about this in a sense that there is a sublime awareness that you are actually contacting a mystical reality that is so far beyond what you see in normal waking consciousness. It just blows your mind to realize that that is existing all the time, but we're not even aware of it. It's beyond anything that we would actually characterize in what we might have grown up with religion. This is a full-on sense of awe that there's like way more to this universe than we can comprehend in our normal waking consciousness, frankly. So if we bring this back to actual sex, then we need to consider that most of us, sex is something that, can be emotionally bonding and bring us closer to our partner. But for the most part, it's something that we think about as stress relief and recreational. It's fun, but there's not this sense of, okay, this is the part of my life where I actually contact a divinity. I actually contact something beyond even myself and my partner, something that's even greater that actually is through us, but something that's even beyond us. So that motivation, getting that sense ahead of time can help set you up for it. The next one is psychedelic sex. What facilitates a 5-MeO experience is the understanding that this experience is driven by your higher self. Your ego is dissolved in a 5-MeO experience. There's no room for it. But there is a fragment of you still experiencing what's happening. And you could call it, for want of a better term, your higher self. So your higher self is present in the 5-MeO experience. So what can we learn about this for conventional sex? Well, conventional sex is much more of an ego-driven activity. Not that the ego is a problem or the enemy, but your ego sees things through a different lens than your higher self. Your ego is going to see me and them, and either I have to act a certain way to perform for them, or I have to please them in a certain way to earn their love. And that kind of egoic, performance-based type of sex is keeping us stuck in a certain part of our brain that is going to block this deeper altered state from taking place, because we are actually more focused on the performance than being fully embodied, which is going to facilitate this trance, this ecstatic trance. Number 3, what facilitates a 5-MeO experience? And that is being fully absorbed in your sensory experience. You're so fully present. That sense of being completely aware of what you're feeling, you're in that sense of touch, smell, seeing, tasting, all of your senses. It's bringing you into an embodied state where you don't even have the capacity to start thinking about other things, to get into even such a deep state that if your partner asked you a question, you wouldn't necessarily even be able to formulate an answer, because you are so in this altered state. And that can happen through the neural entrainment from the activity of intercourse, from the activity of foreplay, from the entire love making experience. Now, what is going to block that from happening is if we are in our mind having sex with our partner, so our body is engaged, but we're thinking about something we saw online, or we're thinking about a past experience with another lover, or a past experience with the same lover, or we're off doing something completely entirely different in our head. We're thinking about a work meeting or, our kids. And what that does is that blocks you from getting to a brain and body connection to facilitate this trance state that is so necessary to bring on a higher level of these molecule, the 5-MeO in your body. It's absolutely essential that you are just absorbed, dropped into your body, and really being fully aware of all what's going on in the moment. Number 4 is what facilitates a 5-MeO experience is 5-MeO. Actually taking 5-MeO teaches us that we are connected to love as a universal force beyond what we consider love in a normal human emotion or even a romantic human emotion. It's a conditional love. I'm happy with you today, but then I'm pissed off at you tomorrow. There's this sense of love being something that can come and go, but we're not only talking about the unconditional aspect of this universal love, we're also talking about the intensity. It is such a potent intensity that it pales in comparison to what we would normally experience. Now, so much of the way that society, our past relationships, just our expectations about what can happen in an encounter in a romantic situation, there's this sense that there's something lacking in terms of what is available in terms of the experience of love. So we can, for instance, believe we aren't enough and that we have to earn love. So we start trying to act a certain way to please our partner during the sexual experience. And that type of behavior is keeping us in a part of our brain where we need to be aware in the moment, where we can't get into a deep trance state. The trance state is a sense of letting go of trying to perform, letting go of trying to play these games of I have to earn the love and I'm not good enough. That just needs to be let go of. And it's also important to do that is to have this awareness. You might not have ever had the experience, but just to daydream about the idea that it is possible to experience a sense of love that's even more potent than we have ever experienced in a relationship, in a romantic relationship. There's something that actually sex can bring us in contact with. It's love that is beyond our own human connection. So number 5, what facilitates a 5-MeO experience? Much the same as we just talked about, 5-MeO does not operate in the realm of conditional love. When you have a full-on 5-MeO trip, there's this cosmic unconditional love that you're accessing. Now, another way that we block that experience for us is the last time we talked about having to perform to please someone because you feel like you're lacking, you're not enough. In this one, it's the opposite. It's that we're actually withholding from our partner because we feel like they need to prove something to us. So there's this sense of conditional acceptance for our partner. What we need to do for this type of sexual experience is to either talk about and clear the air before we actually engage in sex so that we're not holding some kind of resentment towards our partner, or make the decision that we're just going to let it go. And if we're having sex in their bedroom, once we open that bedroom door and we close it again, those resentments are not coming in the room. So we need to make that a conscious decision on our part so that it doesn't block this experience from happening. Number 6 is 5-MeO dissolves the past and the future, and only the now exists. When you are in a 5-MeO experience, you are so present. This is all that matters. This is all that you are aware of. So how can we relate this to conventional sex? Well, one of the things to realize is we can reverse engineer this. If 5-MeO experience is all about being fully present, well, then we need to actually pay attention to, are we actually in the here and now? Or are we thinking about something else? Are we anticipating something that is about to happen? So we often replay past experiences or live in the future. And one way to think about replaying past experiences is sometimes sex is kind of on autopilot with our partner. We expect to be starting off a certain way, to have your partner do certain act and then the other partner do something else, have certain positions at certain times. And it's almost like you could press play and it is kind of an automatic rote thing that you go through with your partner. When sex is missing the element of spontaneity and newness, having a sense of mixing things up, who initiates what positions, when, how things go, how long they go, all the different varieties of how things can shift and change each time you have sex. If that doesn't happen, it's so easy for you to just allow your body to have sex, but your mind is somewhere else completely. So there needs to be a sense of in the moment, spontaneity for you to facilitate this present moment awareness. Living in the future, one way to think about that is how often are we, you might be going down on your partner and thinking, okay, I wonder when they're going to come, or I wonder when, we can actually move on to the next thing. Or you're actually in intercourse, you're thinking about the fact that you're actually going to orgasm. You're actually, instead of being in the moment of what you're doing now, you're anticipating what's going to happen next. And that takes us out of the present moment. Number 7 is 5-MeO has us realize there is a higher power. Think about this in terms of a sense of a mystical sense that there's way more to this universe than we ever have access to in our normal waking consciousness. And yes, there's divinity within us. But there's also the sense in a 5-MeO experience that it's way far greater than us. There's something way more magical, and I'm just using the words higher power for want of a better word. This is not a man in the sky that is separate from us. You have the real sense that there is this consciousness, there's this divinity existing all around us, but it's within us, but beyond us. Conventional sex, we don't normally make room in our minds for the sense that there could be any kind of higher power that we're going to access through sex. And we have the sense that if there is a higher power in our belief system, very often we've been programmed with the thought the higher power is separate. The higher power is something out there beyond us, something in the sky, maybe. adopting the 5-MeO mindset has us challenge those kinds of conditioned ideas and to consider that we actually can feel completely merged with this higher power, but also having the awareness that it is also beyond us. 5-MeO takes us out of the material universe to the vibrational. You're actually accessing, there's a physics to this, and I'm not going to be going into it in this session, but there is actually torsion physics, which looks at the nature of the universe operating at even below the quantum level. Torsion physics is even below that level. And the cosmos, the very fabric of space-time, operating based on torsion physics. And when we think about our own bodies, we're not separate from this. It actually exists within us. The concept of subtle energy or chi or prana, or it's called different names in different whole belief systems or different traditions, but it actually relates to this scientific concept of torsion physics. So the sexual energy within you, which is beyond the electromagnetic, which is beyond the other forces known to physics, this subtle energy, when it's activated, it merges you with another dimension that exists. But unless you're synchronized at a higher frequency, you're not going to even be aware of. And this is why sex is so powerful, to give us access to another dimension. Now, if we're only approaching sex as it's our two bodies, it's a physical act, and yes, we're experiencing some rush of some biochemicals, it's like a natural high. But if we don't have the sense that there's an unseen part of us, there's an energetic part of us, then we don't go in with the same expectation and belief that there's actually something far more vast to experience. The idea of a aura around the body, an energetic and a part of you that exists that is not seen to the human eye, but is known in different healing traditions as being so vital. This actually can be measured today with science. There's a process called gas discharge visualization, which measures this biofield around the body. And that biofield, when we talk about there's this magnetic attraction with this person, this is the biofield of them interacting with you. And when we talk about, oh, I really have chemistry with this person, this is the unseen energetic part of you that's interacting with them. And with sex, you have the potential to actually merge these two energetic bodies to create an experience of accessing another dimension. So when you're in a state of synchronizing these frequencies between the both of you, it has an exponential effect. It's not just one body plus one body. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 5, because you're not just engaging the physical aspect of you, you're engaging the energetic aspect of you. And this is why I talked earlier about this sense of accessing a state of love before, letting go of the resentments, letting go of what you're pissed off about your partner before you have sex. Because thoughts have torsion, there's torsion to them. There's actual subtle energy to your thoughts. We think about thoughts or something, they're private in my head, no one will know, but they actually contribute to this field around your body. If you're holding resentment and anger, you're shrinking your biofield, as opposed to love and generosity and compassion and passion. You are extending this biofield, which allows you to have a more potent you could call it phase shift, a transition in the state of consciousness that you are accessing during the experience of lovemaking. And the strength of your biofield, which has a lot to do with your mind and emotions. Are you in a loving state? Are your thoughts, if you have any, hopefully you'd be in a state of actually not even in a thinking mode. But if you have any thoughts, they're thoughts of love and passion and thoughts that we would characterize as elevated thoughts that contribute to elevated emotions. When that happens, you are strengthening your field and you're able to join with your partner, and both of you increasing your field to merge with another plane of existence that is accessible to you. The torsion physics that is in your body and the torsion physics in your partner's body. Women have more left-hand torsion, men have more right-hand torsion. And when that joins together, there is a different synchronization that can happen to another plane. So in the cosmos, we think about dark matter, dark energy. That is related to left-hand torsion and right-hand torsion. So there is a whole science to this, and why sex has been known in ancient societies to be a powerful method if practiced consciously and conscientiously, like we're talking about, not just recreationally with complete unconsciousness. When it's practiced in this way, it has an incredible, way more powerful, in my opinion, than meditation to access these states. And it's not just my opinion, it's actually based on this physics that I'm talking about. A positive 5-MeO trip requires us to fully let go of what's going to happen. You know, anytime somebody has a bad trip, it can, when you're taking a psychedelic, it can usually be linked to they were resisting the experience. They were trying to control what was going to happen next. They were trying to control the moment. And they were blocking the experience from happening. And then it ended up being quite a stressful, fear-producing event for them. The opposite of that is just completely surrendering to the moment, letting what is going to happen happen and not trying to interfere with it. And that's when people have mystical experiences. They have amazing experiences of this cosmic love, this unitive oneness, but it requires a willingness to just let go. So how does this relate to actually conventional sex? So conventional sex, so often there's this sense of trying to control how things happen. It could be semen retention when you ejaculate. Now, anytime we're trying to manufacture a mystical experience by doing certain things, that's keeping us in this mode of performing, this mode of trying, and that's blocking the full letting go for this deeper state. Now, having said that, there does need to be longer intercourse for this to happen, longer foreplay. There does need to be actually taking sex and not trying to rush the experience, but extending the experience so that your brain and your body can actually make that transition to a trance state. That doesn't happen with just quick sex. So number 10 is 5-MeO will cause body movements and sounds that may not look pretty. When you're in this completely surrendered state where this powerful molecule is taking over your mind and body, there's no telling how your body is going to react. There could be really loud guttural noise coming out of your mouth. There can be your body moving in a certain way. And it's not necessarily going to look what you might think is beautiful or attractive. It might look bizarre. And if we feel like there's some loud noise about to erupt from us, we can try to suppress that because we might think, oh, what will my partner think? So we can block this 5-MeO experience by trying to hold back because we don't want to be judged. And, I mentioned childbirth already. And in a childbirth experience, it is so important for your throat to be fully released, because that connects with the release mechanism of the cervix. And it's so important to just absolutely allow your body to move as it's going to move rather than being told what to do with your body. So just to know that your body might take on different movements, that your mascara might run, you might not look the way that you want to look, but you're going to be in such an altered state that you don't even care. It is going to be such a state that you and your partner both connect to, that there is a bond that can happen between the two of you that is beyond what you would ever experience in a normal sexual situation. So a bond, you both go to this place and you both can. It is important to actually focus on the woman first, because she has a deeper mind-body connection. Her vagus nerve, the major mind-body pathway in her body, is connected directly to her sexual organs. That is not the case in a male body. So there needs to be ample foreplay for the woman in order for her to drop out of her mind that mental focus that we have during waking reality of being in our head, drop into our body during foreplay. But then during intercourse, a woman has the ability to be multi-orgasmic. During the experience of intercourse, when a woman is actually experiencing this altered state, she can transfer, not by anything she tries to make happen, but just by the very fact that when you are deeply, deeply in tune, you are just so unconsciously intuiting the next moment, the next movements. You're so in sync with your partner that neural entrainment happens between the two of your brains. So his brain is going to mirror what's going on in her brain, and you're both going to be taken to this psychedelic dimension together. And I tell you from personal experience, from working with other couples, that being transported to that place together will have you want no other type of sex, no other type of sex. And especially if you experience it with one person, it's going to make you crave that person again because you want that experience. This is not something that is easily done with just a random hookup, because there has to be such a level of trust and connection, and emotional connection is vital for this. It is so important for a woman to feel deeply safe, like no sense of threat from her partner at all, deeply psychologically safe, like this person, I can trust them with my life, because she first is going to go into this deep, deep, deep state. And, you're losing control of your body to a certain extent. And if you were with someone that you couldn't fully trust, if unconsciously you kind of don't know how you feel about this person, then you're going to block the full experience from just consuming you. But if you really know this person has your back, if you really know this person is completely deserving of your trust, then you're going to be able to sink into the full embodied experience at a level that otherwise wouldn't be possible with someone else. And when you do that, And when you get to that absolutely sublime altered state and your partner accesses that too, the two of you will be looking for each other for that type of sex from here on out. Like you got to realize this is sets you up for a level of, you could almost say, eternal bond that does not exist in just more physical oriented sex, where you're having pleasure, you're having an orgasm in conventional sex. Like it feels great, it feels wonderful. You might even emotionally connect. But when you both step into a dimension of this cosmic reality together, and you didn't do it through any substance, you just did it with your bodies, completely sober, that is such a fusion between your two biofields, your two souls, your two spirits, that yes, after the experience, you're going to live as a separate human. You're going to have your separate identity. You're not going to be somehow codependent with your partner. You're going to be able to live without them if they somehow were gone. But you're also going to have a deep knowing and connection with your partner that otherwise wouldn't exist. So that is something worth recognizing. Psychedelic sex, 5-MeO, the molecule itself is a playful experience. I'm talking about all of these high and sacred experiences, but let's just realize at another level, if we take ourselves too seriously, we're going to miss out on the full experience, because 5-MeO, there's a sense of playfulness to this space, this state of consciousness. And what can we learn in terms of conventional sex? So when we try too hard, like we feel like, okay, this is possible. We got to make sure we do this breathing exercise and that. And we got to like gaze in each other's eyes and we got to do all these things, right? Well, again, can some of those things be useful? Yes, they can. But I don't, for instance, when I teach couples, I don't go into like intense breathing practices as part of it. Because again, if we're trying to make our body do something and we have to consciously regulate it, then this is taking us out of the deeper trance state. What's to know is that if you are emotionally connected if your thoughts and your emotions, which being more important to connect your biofields, if those two things are in harmony with each other, if you're both are on the same page, both feeling good about each other, both feeling good about yourselves, and showing up in the experience with an open heart, not holding anything back and not feeling less than. If you show up in that way, then your breath is going to merge. Your breath is going to synchronize. You're not going to have to try to manufacture that. It's going to be a natural, organic experience. So when we try too hard, when we take ourselves too seriously, we forget to play, and then we miss out on just the overall aspect of this, that we got to just not take ourselves so seriously, have fun, be with our partner, and your body just knows how to do these things. Your body is designed for these things. In a 5-MeO experience, when you take 5-MeO, there is a temporary loss of ego, a sense of merging with the divine. You no longer feel separate. So there's that temporary loss of your separate identity, which can also happen during sex. Now, the important thing to realize here, the goal overall in our life is not about living without ego. There's self-help books out there about the ego being the enemy and we should war against the ego. And for spiritual people, we have no ego. And personally, I find that is kind of a toxic message for everyone, but I have worked with women who sometimes don't have enough ego and they have to go find ego, and they probably should do that before they enter a psychedelic state, because it can be quite disconcerting to not even have a sense of your individual identity and then be merging with everything. When you come back to waking reality, there could be a sense of confusion. So it is important to maintain your separate identity. But in those moments where you're entering that space, that ecstatic trance state, it's just for those temporary moments that you tap into this mystical awareness. And the idea being, this is what all mystical traditions are teaching us. And in my work, I draw upon teachings of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, as shows up in the Gospel of Philip. And what we see is this template for sex being a actual mystical state. It has the possibility of being that, but it's not to live in that realm all the time. Their teaching is to actually take those moments of enlightenment that you reach. You could call it enlightenment that you reach in that sacred sexual space. And then during your waking moments, during your daily life, instead of walking around and feeling, judging someone or feeling like they're wrong and you're right, remembering the mindset you had when you were in that 5-MeO state, and letting that 5-MeO state be a teacher to you in your daily life. So you can consciously practice integrating the moments of awareness that you had in the 5-MeO state in your normal life. In the teachings, as I mentioned, in the Christian tradition, there is this sense of we can bring heaven to earth. We can bring that state of consciousness into this 3-dimensional realm by, first of all, tapping into it momentarily during a sexual experience, and then being at choice in our daily life. Am I going to hate on this person, or am I going to realize that there's love within them too, that I don't have to earn love, I don't have to try to perform for love, and to really let that 5-MeO experience be our teacher in the choices we're making about how to react to daily circumstances. But we don't try to get rid of the ego in that experience. In fact, your individual identity is the vehicle to express the uniqueness of the divine as the divine shows up as you. So Teresa of Avila, a mystic from the past, has stated that God has no hands and feet except you and I. And what she's trying to articulate there is that the divine, this immense presence that's beyond us, gets individualized as us for good reason. We each have our own gifts to bring to the world. We each have our own ways of looking at things, our own personality quirks and characteristics. And what is the experience of actually being drawn to another person romantically? It's you fall in love with their quirks, with their idiosyncrasies, with who they are. It's our individual uniqueness that brings us together. So this is not about, if we're going to be these holy, sacred people, we got to get rid of our individuality. Not at all. In the moment of that peak experience during the sexual union, we go beyond that very, very temporarily, but then we come back into life and we integrate that through our daily experience of actually operating in this world of separation, but bringing a different perspective to it. So as I mentioned, romantic attraction, sexual desire, attraction is driven by our ego. I mean, we spend time trying to attract at a certain phase of our life, often somebody, as a partner, by looking a certain way, by acting a certain way. And yes, that those are all egoic things, but it's not like there's some moralistic judgment about that. It's part of the human dance. It's part of all cultures, to even the animal kingdom, to kind of try to lure and attract a partner. But that is one level of existence. That is our ego level of existence. Nothing wrong with it. But that awareness can't really bring us into the full peak state, this sense of really going to the mountaintop, going to the mystical mountaintop. Interestingly enough, sex, because of the physics, because of how these states work in our brain and body, the act of lovemaking can take us there in a way that just sitting on our couch, trying to clear our mind and meditating simply cannot do on the same level, as far as I understand it. So it's really, really interesting to me that sex being something that causes us to want to act from our ego is also the invitation to act from our higher self during the actual lovemaking experience. And then I'll wrap this up with a physicist that has been influential in terms of my work, and that is Claude Swanson. And he actually brought to my awareness the whole area of torsion physics. He didn't actually conceive of this, it was other people. But suffice it to say that this level of the universe is beyond our human body. It is the fabric of the whole, you could say, physical vacuum, and it exists within us. And when we become aware of how we are interconnected with this fabric of space-time, and how we can access these states of consciousness organically without even taking anything, that this potential exists within us, we realize, that what we see in the mirror and we think that's all there is to us, it's not. We realize that there's actually an immortal aspect to us. There's this aspect to us that will exist after we are dead and gone, and existed even before we actually showed up in a human body. And we can tap into that awareness through a sexual experience. Now, the world is in a place of transition, you could say. There is a spiritual awakening going on the planet right now, where we are being urged to, and I would say there's a facilitation of this awareness. We're being urged to raise our consciousness for the future of humanity to exist in a more harmonious way, in a way that we all cultivate an awareness that we rely on each other. We can't war with each other and make it through as a human species. So Claude Swanson has said, it's a very positive and hopeful idea here, that there is a transformation happening on Earth. And when it is finished, we will be like gods. It's not because there's some alien encounter we're going to have and they're going to download something within us. It's not because of some kind of artificial intelligence that we're going to merge with. It's because we're going to realize what has been with us all along, what has been inside of us all along. The greatest secret in the universe is we had it within us all along. And what 5-MeO teaches us as an experience, as a, you could say, drug trip, it teaches us that at the most fundamental level of cosmic awareness is love and connection. That's all really that matters. And isn't it, you could say, profoundly beautiful that the experience of love making brings us this 5-MeO state, or has the potential to bring us this 5-MeO state, where we're reminded about the importance of love and connection. So I leave that thought with you. And if you would like to go further with this type of actually practices to actually put this into action in your life, understanding more about how this operates in a very practical way in your life, I have the Psychedelic Sex Couples course coming up that I will actually send you the link to, and you can check that out and learn about possibly joining us for this next session. So that's all for today. You can send me your questions. Thank you so much for staying tuned.